At the KSMO studios, time for sit down with our friends from the Denton County Extension. Eric Mush is in. Eric, good to see you.
Yeah, good morning. Good to be here.
It's a nice warm one out there today.
It
It's
is.
been a nice warm one for the last few times. I'm going to get that a little closer to you there.
Okay.
All right, very good. So, one of the things, obviously, I wanted to bring up first is our 4-H and FFA livestock auction.
Yep.
You're a big part of that. And of course, the Junior Livestock Committee does a tremendous job with that. The extension, a big part of that. Another incredible sale.
Right. There, it has been an incredible sale. I actually had the forethought to bring the actual overall sale totals, and it looks like we thought last year was a good year, but this year it was another amazing year.
Yeah.
$302,000 total, all said and done. So
And 78 buyers, and that's the key ingredient too.
that is the key ingredient. That's how it all happens. So there's a lot of moving parts, of course, that make it work, and so much volunteer time and volunteer energy. And when you all see it come together, there's always some hiccups, but when we have a great result, it always makes it all worthwhile, all the hard work worthwhile. So,
And we don't want to forget about the pie auction as well on Wednesday night. I think a lot of times people all just concentrate on the livestock auction, but
yes,
there's a pie auction on Wednesday, and that brought in over $12,000.
yes, and it always does.
Yeah.
It's a big event. A lot of good, once again, volunteers, people bringing in the desserts, but then the buyers that bid on those desserts and take them home, and it's all for charity. It all goes into the Junior Livestock Committee, and another successful year. And maybe it's just me, but when we have such a good year, then I always wonder, well,
How are we going to do it next
how
year?
are we
huh?
going to do it next year? How do we continue to step up? But I think this community just continues to support it. I think it's just a valued part of the community, and I think that's what we see that people do value this. They do value the activity and these activities with the youth. I mean, this is a youth event. It
Right.
is the 4-H and FFA Expo, so that's all about the kids, and the community really supports it.
And one thing that we have to look at, Eric, and especially in your business with your, agricultural person, you want to see kids stay in agriculture,
Yeah.
and it's good to see the number of young people that are still working with animals, still wanting to show animals, still raise animals, and they get that taste of business. They learn it. This isn't just go out there, go buy a calf, throw out a few bales of hay, and come back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks and
Right.
do something. There's a lot of hard work involved.
There is, and I don't know how to express this, but our agriculture is changing, and it's really not what it used to be. It's not the sort of, in many cases, you shouldn't generalize, but it's not the family activity that it used to be in terms of our rural population. But this fair, or this livestock show type event, is a little picture of how youth gets involved and how they can get involved. I've talked to ag teachers across sort of south central Missouri, and getting kids involved isn't what it used to be.
Right.
The projects, what's possible for the family to support in terms of the projects the kids do, it's not as easy or as automatic that kids are going to get involved in this. So when we can use the Livestock Expo to bring in kids and get them working with the livestock, and I should point out that a lot of those kids are not coming from farming families.
No, that's the neat part. I was just
They
gonna
have
bring that
gotten
up.
involved with their club, and they've gotten enthusiastic about the animals, and they've got the opportunity to do it. And it can be a great way for kids to get involved with the agriculture whether their family is involved directly with agriculture or not.
You know, we have our FFA day in
Yeah.
February, and the kids come in, and I know that's one of the questions that Mr. Parsons asked the youngins. You know, why did you take FFA? And a lot of times they got into it because of 4-H, because
Yep.
they talked to somebody else and they said it was really cool, and they wanted to do it. Or maybe it's family. They say sometimes they say family pressure. Well, my grandfather did it, my father did it, and my brother did it, so I feel like I should do it. But it really is kind of funny. So some of the names, you know, I've been to a few of these auctions now since 1992. Some of the same names. You
Right.
know they're coming from the same families.
Yep.
And it's like tradition
Oh,
with some of the
you
families.
just feel the tradition
Yeah.
in some of these families. Well, I don't even really come from really a traditional family, but this was the first year in 13 years that I didn't have a child showing at the expo, and it's you know, there's a little bit of sentimental
Sure.
there's a little bit of sentimental feeling about that week and getting ready and getting it all going, and you know, and you see that in some families it goes generations, really.
That's true.
And that's awesome. Speaking of that, and
Okay.
community support and support of our youth, you know, the Dent Phelps County Cattlemen's Association has their annual meeting on August 5th.
Okay.
It's going to be at I'm sorry. I'm scanning. Oh, Smith Valley.
Okay.
Smith Valley was in
Okay.
the nice event center out at Smith Valley, Angus.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where we're going to be awarding the scholarships to the youth in the area that get involved. And these are a lot of the same kids that participate in the expo.
Sure, absolutely.
And we see the kids participate, you know, from when they're small all the way through the expo. And then eventually we'll see their applications for scholarships coming through some of these other organizations. And so a lot of these kids are inspired to maybe continue their education in agriculture, pick a career in agriculture. And so we do have that event on August 5th. It's going to be at Smith Valley, and we'll be awarding some local youth some scholarships as they move on and continue their education.
That's fantastic. And, you know, one of the neat things, and we start talking about scholarships in agriculture, there's a very strong agricultural program at the University of Missouri at Columbia. Obviously, you know all about this. We have seen some of our local people who have shown at the expo go on to be veterinarians.
Oh, yeah.
Came out of this very expo that we have, or 4-H, one of the
Yep.
two, have gone to school and become a veterinarian to service animals, and a lot of them for service a lot of the animals right here in Denton County. And that is, to me, that's giving back. Once you know, you go through that, you learn all about it, then you come back to your own community and help give back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, University of Missouri is a great, you know, option for anyone interested in agriculture because they are involved on, you know, all the cutting edge stuff that's going on in agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
They are, you know, have very robust, you know, research programs that crank out some of the premier, you know, academics and researchers in whether it's, you know, row crop science, animal science, you know, integrated pest management, et cetera, et cetera. They're working with drone technology. They're working with, I was talking to some guys that are in the process of developing this technology that they shock weeds. It's new weed control where they have sensors and electric. I don't even know how to explain it, but
Probably like a grid.
yeah, they run over with the, you know, they mount it on a tractor and they run over a crop and they actually zap the weeds rather than spray them, and you know, it's the kind of thing I can't even explain, but it's sort of a next generation. When you start seeing resistance to some of our agrochemicals, then people scratch their head at places like University of Missouri, and you say, well, what might be next, and how can we start looking into it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's places like the big land grant research institutions that all starts,
Right.
and eventually, you know, trickles down into the industry and it becomes everyday stuff. But but it's an exciting place if you get a chance to be part of it.
Right,
Sure.
and it has grown a lot at University of Missouri too. I
Yeah.
remember the old agricultural center up there was 3 or 4 times the size of that now,
Right.
and it just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the cutting edge of technology, working with agriculture, I remember years ago when you start talking more agribusiness and the computer input that was being generated at that time, but also the use. Now you're talking about drones and different things. They're using molecular medicine or molecular different things. The
Yeah.
university is to do this with the plants to find out if we shock this plant, will it make it dormant?
Sure.
And I think that's just the neatest
Sure.
thing. I read
Dormant or
about that and I
sterile.
said, how would you make it dormant? I said, well, our bodies are done by a heartbeat. If your
Right.
heart stops, they shock it, get it going again. Well, can we do the same thing
Oh
to a
yeah.
plant?
Oh yeah. And a lot of the stuff that gets started in agriculture then ends up in medicine,
Oh, yes.
just because some of this is basic research, and when you see those mechanisms, and if they work in agriculture, they can then be carried over to how they would apply in medicine, whether that's in the area of pharmaceuticals or in any other area. So yeah, those universities are interesting and exciting places. And another thing that I just heard about on a phone conversation was pasture management, which I'm going to talk a little bit about because it is a drought, and we'll get to
Right.
that. They've started using what's called proximal scanners to look at pastures. So you can mount a device to like a UTV or a four-wheeler, run over your ground, and it will record and measure certain things.
So it kind of scans the ground
Sort
and
of
finds
scans
out
the
where
ground
we
and-
have good soil, bad soil.
Well, where your grass is, how much your grass is, how when it comes to sort of grazing management.
Wow.
And this has been under development. It's called Paddock Track, and they've been developing it. And it's got its quirks, and they're still ironing it out. It's working in some places. But I've heard that is just sort of a stepping stone to remote sensing. So they're getting so close to where they can look at pastures from satellites to monitor productivity, that the proximal sensing is just going to be a stepping stone to remote sensing.
Yeah.
And so that proximal sensing, it might not even get ironed out before it's obsolete and they start doing something else. And
The way technology is today, that's not out of the question.
and the thing is, in grazing schools, we've got a grazing stick, and we teach people to go out and use their grazing stick and keep track of what their forage is doing and whatnot. Well, we're talking about a satellite, a grazing satellite instead of a grazing stick, and I think when it all gets rolling, it's going to be, cheaper
Sure.
than going out and starting your truck and driving out there and walking around with your grazing stick, because you can sit down at your computer and have a look,
But one of the neat things though,
which has its good and its bad side.
It does. It does. But I think the people, the older generation who still use the grazing stick, you just can't rely on that sound. You
Right.
still have to go out there and check certain areas.
Right.
You have to do it because
Well,
you
yeah.
can't assume that that's always going to be right.
And that's what the grazing stick really does. And the older generation use their eye
Yeah.
and their experience. Well, all the grazing stick does is help dial in your eye a little bit, because people put down their grazing stick pretty quick after they get their eye dialed in. And but it's all it's all part of the it's a management tool, and the sky's the limit when it comes to management tools.
And when it comes right now, we as you mentioned, we are kind of in a drought.
Yep.
We're not as bad as some areas of the state. We've actually had a little bit of rain. Some places have had very little
Right.
rain at all. But coming up, I believe that's tomorrow night, there is a meeting that we're going to talk about managing your herd to get through
The drought.
The drought.
We have been here in Dent County. This is our second year in a row of moderate drought, and last year the severe and extreme drought was sort of southwest. This year the severe and extreme drought is sort of central part of the state, and we've kind of been in a pocket that's sort of had extended moderate drought, and not just in the growing season. I mean, we're down on rainfall Last year, people fed more hay than they probably expected to.
Right.
This year's hay crop was a third to a half of what people usually expect.
Yeah.
So even though we've been getting some rain, we're getting some, things are greening up, uh, you know, feeding cattle is going to be an issue. And one of the things that we talk about in these drought meetings is, not only how to take care of these stressed pastures with this extended moderate drought we've been going through, but also some options for feeding. Have you seen any hay for sale? Not that I would be able to afford to
Not
buy it.
recently.
Because the point is,
Yeah.
any hay out there is really expensive. And so what we're encouraging producers to do is to really look at the price of the nutrients in the feed.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you compare what with livestock, we don't talk about calories, we talk about TDN, which is total digestible nutrients. And TDN is kind of the calorie measurement we look in feeds. If you compare to what you're paying for TDN in a bale of hay right now, you can really shop around at some of these commodity feeds. And how to substitute some of those more expensive feeds with cheaper feeds.
Right.
What's important is making sure that those cows' nutrition is met in the most efficient way. And that might not be rolling out hay.
No. And one of the things we had, I don't know if it came from the extension or not, is there's a lot of scams right now with hay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
you know,
sure.
if people are out there and they say, oh, yeah, they buy this hay and it's out of state, and they
yeah.
never get it.
They never get it.
You
They
know.
never get it.
And so they're going online, and that's why everybody says, okay, going online, you can go buy it online. You don't know who that is, and they may not give you your money back. You may not even know if it's real or not.
And if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too
Yeah.
good to be true. You kind of have to fall back on that as well. I had a discussion. We had a drought meeting up in Westphalia in Osage County, which is hit pretty hard.
Yeah, they're really
And I was
dry.
talking to a guy during one of the breaks, and I was a little bit worried he was getting led down the garden path because it sounded a little bit too good to be true. I mean, I hope it works out for him,
Mhm.
but everybody's trying to hunt up hay. There are places in the Midwest that have hay. They say there's hay coming out of Oklahoma, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also opportunities to look at other feed sources, and one of the things we'll talk about in this meeting is how to actually calculate that TDN so you can compare
Okay.
one thing to another. And at the price of hay right now, it is going to be worth, as we go into the winter, looking at cheaper ways to supplement those cows. And I will say, and Daryl's going to come in on Friday and talk about the market, the cattle market.
Mhm.
Calf prices are high. A lot of cows have been culled, but people want to hang on to the cows they have.
Mhm.
So when, in a few years, it looks like we could be in good shape if we've got the productive cows
Sure.
to do it. So we have to get our cows through in good shape. We have to make sure that we're not hurting ourselves just because hay gets tight and expensive.
So this meeting tomorrow night, where's that going to be, and what time does it get underway?
That is going to be at the WordAC Extension Center Education Building. For those
Okay.
of you who haven't been to WordAC, it is in Cook Station, which is, I think, about 19 miles from Salem. If you go out Highway 19, and there's a road
Right
there's
there.
a sign at the road that you turn on to get down to WordAC. The meeting is going to start. It's going to be from 6 to 8.
Okay.
And
Is this free?
this is free.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about pasture management. We're going to be talking about feeding and feedstuffs, and we're also going to be talking about state and federal drought assistant options. Once again, Dent County didn't hit the trigger for severe drought,
Right.
so those options might not apply, or some of the options might not apply to Dent County. Crawford County did this year. So last year it seems to just go all the way around Dent County and not ever get us.
Yeah,
But
well,
so they will be talking,
which is
about,
okay. I mean,
which is
okay.
well, you shouldn't wish for a severe
No,
drought. That's
no.
for sure. But they will talk about that because Crawford County is going to be in that severe drought category.
And anybody's welcome to this. You don't have to be just from Dent or Crawford
Oh
County.
no!
Anybody's
Oh
welcome.
no! Actually, the previous meetings we've had people from all many surrounding counties, and we've had some big events. And unfortunately, in the extension, business, our best attended meetings are the drought meetings.
Yeah.
That's what gets people out. But hopefully, we'll be able to provide some information that's useful for people, because people need to be making decisions, and they need as much information as possible to make the right decision. Sometimes it's the less bad decision you have to make in a thing like a drought. Yeah, we do hope people come, and we hope it's useful. You can register if you call the Crawford County Extension Office. Their number is 573-775-2135. You can also inquire at the Dent County Extension Office, which is 573-729-3196. It's not too late to get involved. They're not going to cap it, I don't think. I think we'll go standing room only if we have to. But if you can get down there, give them a call and come down. I think, especially this year, it's kind of showing us that people need a drought plan. Drought isn't something that we just react to the year it happens. I think we can just expect, maybe it's not going to be next year or the next year or the next year.
Yeah.
It might be, it might not be.
But
we are going to have another drought.
Sure.
And people need to have a plan, and they have to know sort of what cards they have in their hand to play, and planning ahead is always better than reacting to the situation. So going to the meeting like this and sort of learning your options is a big part of it.
And there may be some new information at this meeting, because there was a statewide meeting last night,
Yes.
actually.
Yes.
I do not know what the results of that meeting are, and I'm sure you'll probably find out later today on that what might be available statewide that might be able to help some people.
Yes, and I do know starting last year they started reviewing, statewide started reviewing the different regions in the state, and what the actual losses were. We go on the drought monitor, which has a D0, D1, D2, D3, and the trigger for assistance is sort of D3. Well, I think last year I saw some reports where they're reviewing that a little bit, and so I think they continue to review that, because that doesn't always reflect very well the sort of needs of producers. So there might be some new news about that, and maybe it will be there. There will be, I think FSA will be attending this, and they can always provide some insight on what's going on.
Well, we invite everybody out.
Sure.
It's tomorrow night, 6 to 8, out at the Wordak Farm, and you do need to register. So please call the Crawford County Extension Office or Dent County Extension Office, and either one I'm sure that anybody at Dent County can immediately forward you down there.
Yep.
And get the information. Eric, these kind of, I'll say, workshops, seminars, whatever you want to call them, are very important, especially in our area, because you may not be affected like you're saying today, but you may be affected, or you were affected a year ago or 2 years ago. Now, maybe not so bad this year, but things are changing. And as you're mentioning, the government's starting to get involved with, hey, we see this drought now, and this is affecting our economic base. Agriculture is so huge in Missouri. Yeah. When you start to see this drought and how it affects our gross national product within the state of Missouri, you've got to be concerned.
Well,
not only for the individual, but for the entire state.
Well, and for the entire state, and the way our industry works, it's not just Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a drought in Missouri affects beef in Walmart in Ohio, and it's all tied together. So
actually, it affects the meat in California.
And California,
because
as well.
A lot of the stuff, and Daryl, you will probably talk about this on Friday. A lot of the cattle that come through South Central Regional Stockyards actually gets shipped over to Kansas and Nebraska,
right,
and goes to those feeder lots, and then they end up going to the West Coast.
Oh yeah, we are number 3 for calf crop in the country. We've got more beef cows than many states, and we're sort of, it's always Texas and then kind of Oklahoma, Missouri neck and neck. So a huge number of the calves that are fed for our beef industry come from Missouri. And when you drive down the road, I mean, that's what you see. You see cows. You don't see feeders. You don't see, what you see are cows in fields raising calves. And that is our business in Missouri. And because we're in the cow-calf business in Missouri, our forage base, which we use to do that, our grass, is very, depends on rain.
It sure does.
And when we don't get that rain, it the effects of that ripples across the country. And so it is important, and I think that you do what you can do as a producer. You do what you can do, but I think on the bigger picture and policymaker side, they do what they can do to keep it all rolling as well. So
very good. What else have you brought in for us to digest?
Just quickly, a reminder about the highly pathogenic avian influenza. It does pop up. I get little emails that it's shown up in this county now or that county, and they are seeing it in backyard flocks. It's sort of slowed down a little bit, maybe as things got hot. I think in the spring birds move around a little bit more. But I got a call yesterday that was potential avian influenza. And so really what I do, or what we do, and what I can ask you to do now, is if your birds do show symptoms of respiratory distress, a little bit of swelling around their eyes, discolor, for most people, including myself, it's hard to differentiate different diseases in birds. A lot of the symptoms are very similar, whether it's Merrick's disease or whether it's actually avian influenza, or whether it's some of these other diseases that birds might get. But if you have any of those symptoms, they encourage you to call the Missouri Department of Agriculture Animal Health Division, and that number is 573-751-3377, because they are really trying to keep track of this, and it is continuing to spread. If you see your birds are looking mopey, having some of these other symptoms, they're not laying eggs, maybe you've had a few deaths that you can't attribute to a raccoon or something, you can call the Missouri Department of Agriculture, or you can call the Extension office and we can give you that number. But staying on top of it is going to require people actually reporting it, and so we can keep track of it. It's been seen in Phelps County. It was in Marys County and then in Phelps County. And we're talking backyard flocks in these cases. So,
but that can spread.
That can spread. And, and really what's at stake, and one of the reasons they're trying to keep track of it, is there is a fairly sizable poultry industry, not necessarily in our part of the state, but in other parts of the state, and so they don't want to risk some revenue.
Well, sure. And there's a lot, as you're mentioning, more, I'll say, out and back hen houses we're starting to see again, because a lot of cities actually have opened it up to where you can raise your own chickens now.
Sure. I mean, it's hugely popular.
So if you have that within a city limits, that could spread even quicker if there's a lot of household hen houses around.
Yeah. So anyone with chickens need to be, vigilant, keep your eye on your birds. And I wouldn't be too alarmist about it. But if your birds are sick, have them checked out. And maybe keep it from spreading around the neighborhood.
Right, and keep your birds well hydrated and cool too, because
animals across the spectrum. I mean, this heat is stressful to us. It's going to be stressful to
animals. In those hen houses, I've seen some hen houses with metal roofs, and Eric, that's incredible, because they're just baking.
Right. Yeah. Shade, ventilation, and especially, I don't know, more and more people are interested in raising meat birds for themselves. The Cornish Rock Cross, they are really susceptible to overheating, and they're not like a laying hen, and that they're somewhat active and will seek out maybe a place with better ventilation or shade or something. So if you've got a pen of meat birds at home right now, keep your eye on them because they are very susceptible to heat stress.
Absolutely. So be careful about
Yeah.
that.
And one more thing,
Okay.
just as a reminder, and I forgot my flyer, but we are continuing to educate people about the black vultures.
Mm-hmm.
And we're partnering with the Missouri Department of Ag, USDA, and MDC, and Farm Bureau, because
Mm-hmm.
Farm Bureau is behind this. We are they're continuing to try to collect more and more data. I think they're viewing this as more of a threat than an actual issue right now. The potential for these things to be a problem is probably bigger than the actual problem right now. But that's the whole point. Get ahead of the curve, make people aware that this is there, and then hopefully avert problems. But if you think you might especially coming up into fall calving season, and that's
Mm-hmm.
a good time to mention this, if you think you might have some black vultures, there's some good information on how to discern between a black vulture and a turkey vulture, and then what to do if you might even be at risk of predation. You can get the permit to eliminate them ahead in advance.
Yep.
And one thing that we've found is a lot of people have gotten those permits just out of precaution, just in case, and there have been very few of them used, which is a good sign.
That's a good sign.
But if you do get a permit and you need to, if some vultures are getting aggressive toward your cattle or other livestock, if you have a permit, you can remove them. And then they say hang them. You can hang them. They call it an effigy. Hang them by their feet upside down, and the vultures will move on.
Yep.
And not continue to stay there. Another option is if you call the USDA, they will bring in dummy effigies.
Right, I heard that too. Yeah.
And they're very supportive and willing to come and help you get those vultures to move on,
Mm-hmm.
whether you need to shoot one or not. And then apparently it's very effective. And so the whole point is keep them, just move them out of your neighborhood, and then they won't be a problem.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody here has seen a black vulture one time or
Yep.
another near the road.
Yep.
But also we see a lot more turkey vultures, I
We
think,
do.
in
And-
our area than you see black.
And I sent them some pictures of calves that I think were killed by vultures, and I think they confirm that. You kind of have to do a necropsy, and that necropsy can mean a lot of things, but there's some telltale signs that the calf was killed by a vulture versus died and was eaten by a vulture, or maybe killed by a coyote and then eaten by a vulture. There's different telltale signs. But I've seen vultures hanging around, and I'm, always thought, oh, that's got to be them. There's ways to identify them looking at the colors of their wings and the profile of their wings when they're flying. And the more you learn about it, the easier it is to tell. And every time I was certain I found a tree full of black vultures, they weren't. Because I could see, and sometimes they will mix, and
Right,
there may
sure.
have been some in the bunch that were black vultures, but you kind of develop an eye, and learning just how to tell the difference between the birds without actually seeing the color of their head
Right.
is very useful.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you from worrying too much.
A lot of things out there that we can learn all the time to try and stay on top of the game, and hopefully you don't have any of those black vultures around your area. But especially in this time right now, is the heat stress could stress a calf.
Right.
And if that calf is stressed and looks distressed, those vultures will attack.
If it's a baby calf.
If it's a
then-
baby calf.
Well, yeah.
They
Yeah,
will.
well, and the biggest threat really is upcoming calving season.
Well,
and,
yeah,
and they've
absolutely.
even suggested, and I don't think this is realistic, that people move their calving season to avoid when vultures are in our region, because vultures are migratory.
Right.
I don't see that happening.
No.
But I certainly hope it doesn't become so severe that people consider that. And I don't think it will. But people need to educate themselves and
Sure.
be vigilant.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn about this.
Yeah.
And I remember when I started hearing the commercials from the Department of Conservation about black vultures. I said, well, they've been around a long time,
I think so, yeah.
but you see mostly turkey vultures, especially in the travels around here. I've seen more
Right.
turkey vultures, but I have seen a few black ones, and I'll tell you what, they're it's kind of scary looking.
They
You
are.
don't really want to be near one when it's kind of getting close to you because they're big.
Well, one of the pictures that I provided them, and actually it was a calf that had been apparently killed by vultures, and I had taken a lot of photographs of it because I thought it looked like vulture predation to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2014.
Wow.
Looking at back at those
2014.
pictures, 2014. So, and the guys that with USDA that viewed those pictures, they agreed that it most probably was vulture predation. So I think these guys have been getting in our area for a while, and there were rumors of occasionally, vultures getting calves, and that's one reason I took so many pictures of that calf that day. But apparently they are going to be on the increase, and they're going to be here in the future, and they're just here to stay probably. So people just need to be aware of it.
We're going to be here in the future because they've been protected.
Right.
And I'm kind of thinking that level of protection doesn't need to be there anymore.
Perhaps
because they allowed them to reproduce and do what they need to do on their own to get the numbers back up. Okay, well, the numbers are back up. Now we're having permits issued to eliminate them should they be a threat to your herd.
Right.
However, a threat to your herd, if you don't get that permit, you can't shoot that vulture without federal repercussions.
And this is the strange thing. I think it's strange. Because it's migratory, no state has jurisdiction. Falls to the feds, and the feds have their own way of working.
Mm-hmm.
And usually any of the regular critters or whatever you want to call them that threaten our livestock, you have the right to protect your livestock. So if you've got a raccoon in your hen house, it doesn't have to be coon season.
Sure, right.
to remove that raccoon. Or if you've got another issue of something threatening your property,
Right.
you do always have a right to protect your property, unless it's federal jurisdiction, and that's another category. And so, in order to
It's
protect
kind of like that asterisk on
Right,
the end, right?
right.
You can shoot this unless.
So you have to have that permit, which then allows you to protect your property. But it's just another hoop, and we'll see where it goes in the future. But right now, the best thing is just to be aware and educate yourself.
Yeah, I'm not. The endangered species was a great thing to
Right.
protect some species, but they don't remove them very quickly.
Well, this was never endangered.
Well,
it's just-
according to when they put it on there, it was.
Oh, maybe it was.
But that was back in the 20s or something, but they never seem to review. They don't have
Right.
accurate counts on these. So if you're going to put an endangered species, you would think, okay, then you guys should be monitoring this. So when they get to a certain number, take it off there.
Well, they're obviously extending their range. And so extending their range is a pretty good clue
That there's
they're not,
more of them.
That there's more of them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I know. Sometimes our government we cry when they do put on the endangered species. Oh, we can't go hunt that anymore. Okay, so let it grow. I mean, there was a while deer were very scarce in Missouri,
Right.
and the conservation limited that,
Right.
and did a great job of actually creating the deer herd to come back. And now it's gotten a little bit out of hands where we've got more than enough.
Right.
But if you didn't stop it then, there probably wouldn't have been any deer here. There was no elk here for a while. So, we understand how that can happen. However, and look at the bison that they had to go protect out west.
Yeah.
They're just kind of, they get in these great big herds, and you could just pick them off one after another. They wouldn't move. You'd shoot one, they'd go down, the other one stay right there.
And the issue with the vultures, of course, or buzzards, or whatever you prefer to call them, is, they're not a game animal.
No.
So you can't use sportsmen to help manage. And so their management is going to be a big question if they do get to the point where that population does need managed. Is it going to be, permits to livestock owners or how? But, the game animals can be managed by sportsmen through permits and seasons and whatever, deer harvest, etc. But How are we ever going to manage? And it's not going to be like the feral hogs where we can eliminate them apparently, because that you can't eliminate something that is a
Migratory.
migratory animal, but we are potentially going to need to manage them someday. So we'll see what they come up with.
See, now I was just going to bring that out. That it's not going to be like, and the feral hog issue, that they tried to do that, eliminate it when they first noticed it by hiring sportsmen to go out there and eliminate these feral hogs. Well, okay, you kill one or two or three or five maybe out in your group, but there's 25.
Right.
Then they go breed. Now you got 45, and then you got 85. The next thing you know, it's out of hand. I don't know what the reproductive system of vulture is. I couldn't tell you. And I really could care less.
Yeah.
However, but once you get a certain amount that that they need to be now not necessarily eradicated,
Right.
but if in your area you have too many, they're going to have to fight for food. So they're going to fight for food. Now they become a little bit more aggressive.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why I think you're seeing some of these, because you got a drought on right now. Those birds need to drink and eat too.
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean their population exceeds their food base, then they end up looking for different types of feed. And vultures, whether they're the turkey vulture or the black vulture, they do clean stuff up. I mean, they do have an important function for cleaning things up, but that can't be our living livestock. So
no, and some people about the American eagle. American eagle's a very, very aggressive bird, and especially when they have young. Yeah. Anything that they can grab with those claws, they're going to take it back to the nest.
Right.
People think, well, they took my small dog. Well, that's the cycle of life for them. They don't know it's your small dog with a tag.
Well, and if you've got sheep and goats, I mean, these birds of prey aren't going to get they're not going to get a calf other than these black vultures, which will tear them apart on the ground. But some of these other, whether it's a golden eagle or bald eagle, a baby lamb or a kid goat is really about the size of a rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And coyotes pick them up and they're gone lickety split. And these birds of prey are another threat that can pick them up lickety split.
Down out of nowhere.
Yeah. And they get in hog pens. They'll get baby pigs. Yeah, and like I said, when you start talking about some of these birds of prey or these vultures, because they are under that federal, we're not in the regular category of we have the right to protect our property.
Right.
We have to be, just do what we can do and be as educated as we can be.
And I think people need to be more aware of that, Eric, and that's probably would be an excellent course to have from the University Extension, because there's a lot of people probably not aware of that.
That is a great idea, and it would be a great opportunity to also partner with some of these other agencies dealing with this. And we do. They are going to set up. If you go to the state fair, they are going to set up a big booth about black vultures up there.
Heard that.
They've made, they've done some taxidermy work that have examples of how people can identify the different vultures. They have a lot of educational, information. They are trying to get around the state to events to start talking about this. But, I think just protecting livestock in general, where the black vulture is part of that picture, and we can talk about some of these other things, I think that would be a great topic.
I think it would be too.
Yeah.
Kind of like the fence law in Missouri, which is crazy.
Sure, it is. It is.
It's insane. And like, which one affects me?
Right. And at the point right now, Extension, it's so crazy. Extension tries not to wade in other than to point people toward resources, because you have to be a lawyer.
Yeah. Well.
And if you're not a lawyer, you can get in trouble if you try to address some of those issues, because it's getting so complicated.
Yeah. But to make people aware that there are 2 fence laws in Missouri, and depending upon where you are, which one, how it affects you. And I mean, you can make them aware of that. You can't tell them how to do it, though.
But if you pick either fence law, whether you have the alternative or the whatever default, and I think that in Dent County we have the regular fence law. And it's kind of up in the row crop countries where they have the other fence law. Uh, but even within the separate laws, it's just a tangle
It's a mess.
trying to interpret it. So,
Well, it's written by lawyers,
right,
so it's legalese.
it's a law.
and lawyers write things, and I'm not picking on lawyers, but lawyers write things that are a little bit ambiguous
Right.
because there's a gray area. There's always a gray area in things, and that always becomes the problem.
Well, and I think ambiguous is one way, but it's not intuitive. I mean, their intention is it becomes so precise that it's not intuitive anymore, and it's I mean, there's a reason for that, but when it comes to how you apply it, it just leaves you scratching your head sometimes.
Yeah, that's always been the part when people start talking about it. I said, I think I figured it out. I said, well, if you have, you're amazing.
If you have,
because nobody else has.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
not at all. Well, thank you for coming in, spending some time with us, and of course, we appreciate all the effort you put in. Again, a wonderful, wonderful FFA auction. And before we leave, I do want to first off not only say how well that went, it really went well, but we have to give our 4-H advisors just a ton of credit because you got volunteers in this community that do so much work, and for all those 4-Hers that have come and grown with these great advisors that they've had, and Amy does a tremendous job, and they coordinate things and they put things together. It's a vital and very formidable 4-H function we have going on here in Dane County. I hope it never changes.
I do too, and it's not just the 4-H advisors; all the volunteers in the barns,
Right.
and the day, from when they bring the livestock in until the livestock go out all the way through the show and the sale, it never runs like clockwork. And so people, those people managing the barns, making sure the kids are where they need to be and when, and there's a lot of hurry up and wait, and everybody does such a great job of just making it work, because when you have so many moving parts, it's usually never perfect.
Right.
But because of all the great volunteers, all the great help, it always turns out to be great.
Yeah.
And that whether it's the advisors or all the volunteers in the barns and the parents and the kids themselves.
And the projects that these 4-Hers put together,
Yes.
that are on display too. And
Yes.
I hope people take the time to actually go into the youth building and check that out.
And that youth building is full of
Yeah.
great projects.
Yeah.
And I'm always amazed because I'm always preoccupied with some of the stuff going on in the barns, and I walk in there and it's, those kids really crank out some great
I
stuff.
think people walk around and sometimes they just kind of, oh yeah, okay. But go and actually look at how some of these kids have built these things.
Yep.
And you'd be amazed. And I just remember one, matter of fact, when we were out at one of the auctions, this guy made a chair out of gears. He welded it out of gears, all different kinds of gears. And I thought, where would you ever get the idea to even make a chair out of gears? You
Right.
wouldn't think it'd be comfortable, but I guess you put a little padding down on
Right.
it. Nobody else is going to have one.
Right.
So, but it was a really cool looking piece, solid as a rock. He did a great job welding, and I thought, somebody has a future
Right.
in doing this, creating maybe metal furniture, or maybe becoming an outstanding welder, or moving forward in his career, or her career. I don't know who did it. I can't remember the name on it, but it was a real incredible piece.
Right.
The imagination
Right.
to come up with that.
Creativity, artistic, but using the practical skills they've learned with the welder to do, to express that sort of artistic approach to.
And those are the things that really grab my attention
Sure.
when I go in and look at the youth building, because it is amazing what some of these kids, they visualize this and then they make it happen.
And the ag program at the high school here in Salem, they've got that. They're doing a lot. I walk through that shop occasionally to talk to the advisors, and they've got that plasma cutter, and they've got some great equipment in there and facilities for those kids to get that hands-on you know, experience using those tools, and you just walk through that and you see all the little things that the kids are working on just walking through their shop.
Right.
And yeah, it's a great program.
Yeah, FFA. Gosh, I remember years ago, and when I talked to Mr. Parsons about it was basically about 9 different areas of FFA. They were pretty stable, but now it's just exploded. You can take so many different things with FFA and the welding and plasma cutting, and you can do all these different things, molecular structures now. That's all part of these FFA programs.
Yep.
And these kids can get into this and really sink their teeth into it and make a career out of this.
Well, and that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to have all those skills, really, or all of those skills have a place in the community, in the industry, in the, you know, in agriculture. So it's great that they get all that exposure in school.
It's fantastic. Eric, thank you for
Yep,
coming in and
thank you.
spending some time with us. Eric Mush from the Denton County Extension Office. Of course, he covers more than just Denton County. You guys don't have one office anymore.
Right.
How many counties do you actually have to cover?
I hate to tell you this, I'm up to 10.
10.
We've lost the livestock specialist in the counties, and so we've had to divide up her area. And so if anyone is looking for a good job, Extension is hiring.
Yeah,
So.
they are. But I'll tell you, that's a lot of traveling on your part, but it's well rewarding. You know, you get out there and you get to see a lot. You meet a lot of great people out there.
Well,
You really do.
it's unfortunate that we're spread so thin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not ideal, but you know, I think the work is important, and all of the communities I work in have a long relationship with Extension, and it's a valuable part of the community. So, you know, we do what we can, and it's always great when we do have more time in the community than we do have, but
Right.
we make it work.
You know, we have some great extension people, Galen Bundlin, Rachel Hopkins. List goes on and on and on. These people are fantastic, and they're always at your disposal. They're always a phone call away, and if you need to have a presentation, sometimes just talk to them. I think Galen was up here last month, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't he have some kind of presentation? I think he did.
Yep.
I had talked to him 2 months or maybe 3 months ago when he came in, and it was a really interesting conversation. He came in with Daryl,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it's always interesting to hear what these guys have to say, and that's how you learn.
And we do a lot over the telephone.
Yep.
You can if you have an issue, we can sometimes help resolve it over the telephone. We can give you the heads up on something, you know, coming, you know, on the schedule. I had 4 calls yesterday because people are wanting to cut their sorghum Sudan, and they're concerned about nitrates. So we can do a spot check in the extension offices, and if, for example, I had 2 calls from Texas County yesterday. I wasn't in Texas County, but the person in the office can do the spot check, and then I can discuss it. They can take a picture on their phone. We can discuss it with the producer. What are their options? How's it look? You know, we can get those answers to people sometimes whether we're standing there physically or not.
It's a nice option to have.
Yeah.
Fall back on your extension when they can be there, like you say, in a number of different ways. Zoom calls,
Right.
pictures, different things of that nature. And, of course, we always remind people to go to our Denton County Extension. You can go to the website, and there's a lot of good information on there. You can just go to, when you go to Denton County Extension, if you're looking for all the classes available everywhere, you can. You can go right to the home page, and, I mean, there is a bunch of different things, some by Zoom, some in person, some both.
Some both. Yeah.
And there's always more classes and I'll say seminars or workshops always being added to address situations at hand, like our drought, which is tomorrow night again, 6 to 8 at the Wordak Farm. Do get registered for that, though, by calling the extension 729-3196. Give them a call here. You can also call the Crawford County one, but I don't have that number memorized.
Crawford
Eric,
County
if you wouldn't mind
is,
giving that.
sure, 573-775-2135.
If you need to address the drought, this is a perfect time for you to do it to keep your herd as healthy as possible. You're going to get some information I guarantee you would not have any other way. Guarantee it. Sir, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Eric Mush from the Dent County Extension, our agricultural specialist. We always appreciate him coming in, and everybody from the Extension. Our Extension Wednesday at KSMO. We have news coming up from the Associated Press, statewide news, and civic happenings. Keep it right here.
A better variety of music. KSMO, Salem.